It's amusing how you assume you know someone, really know them until you don't. For 8 years, it was just my wife and me. There was my son from a prior relationship, but he was just a child, blameless and untouched by adult problems. Our life wasn't exceptional. We were merely two individuals in our early 30s leading an apparently ordinary life. She worked at a construction company. I used to find it fascinating to see a woman donning a hard hat and managing large projects. There was a unique charm about her that attracted people, including her boss. Our modest home was rented, but we felt like we were in a paradise that we could call our own. It was cozy and familiar, and we had a routine that we followed every day. After a long day at work, she would come home, and we would have dinner together. We would chat about our day, watch some television, and then retire to bed. Life was uncomplicated, but everything started to shift. It was like a beautiful summer day suddenly shrouded in dark clouds when my wife began to arrive home late from work, citing the mounting pressure of new construction projects. I had a nagging feeling that something was amiss, but I chose to believe her excuses. Why wouldn't I? Additionally, there was a change in her attire. She had never been one to prioritize designer labels over comfort. Unexpectedly, she started bringing home shopping bags from high-end boutiques, which was unlike her. I didn't make much of it, believing that she wanted to try something new. After all, change is inevitable, even for my wife. It was when I saw the credit card statements that everything hit me. We had always been prudent with our expenses, never indulging in unnecessary purchases. Yet, there were charges for unnecessary items, such as fancy clothing for both genders and exorbitant restaurant bills. In addition, there were hotel charges that left me perplexed. A sense of dread washed over me, and I contemplated confronting her and asking her what was going on. But I was afraid of her response. I was afraid that the woman I loved and married wasn't the person I believed her to be. That was when I realized that I had to take action. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was also about my son. His future and stability were at stake, and everything was hanging in the balance. It all began like this. My life, which appeared perfect, began to unravel gradually because of a series of peculiar conduct and unforeseen credit card bills. But what happened next took me by surprise. I wasn't ready for it at all. You must have heard how trust is like a mirror. Once shattered, you can glue it back, but the cracks will always be noticeable. As time passed, the fissures in my trust for her began to surface. There were some minor discrepancies that caught my attention. Her phone would buzz late at night, and when I inquired about it, she would nonchalantly brush it off as work. Despite wanting to trust her, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Additionally, there were some unfamiliar items that I stumbled upon in our home, including men's accessories such as a watch, a tie, and cufflinks. As they didn't belong to me, I asked her about them and she dismissed them as gifts for a company raffle. The explanation she provided was so peculiar that it lingered in my thoughts. Additionally, there was a distinct fragrance, an unfamiliar scent that was neither hers nor mine. It clung to her clothes when she arrived home late from work, a blend of cologne and something else that I couldn't quite recognize, but it was unmistakable. When I confronted her about it, she dismissed it as probably being from a colleague or client. The scent persisted and kept returning. I felt as though I was living in a perpetual state of unease. The person I had adored and been with for 8 years was now exhibiting suspicious behavior, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of doubt. She was acting like a stranger to me, concealing herself behind half-truths and inconsistent explanations. I was conflicted between wanting to trust her and facing the brutal reality that was unraveling before my eyes. During quiet moments when she was absent, I found myself replaying our joyful moments, wondering if they were as authentic as I had thought. That's the most challenging aspect of doubting, you know. It makes you question everything, even the happy memories. Amidst all of this, I had to maintain a brave demeanor for my son, a cheerful front that concealed the turmoil inside. He was blameless in this situation, and I yearned to safeguard him from the brewing storm. Managing heartbreak as an adult is one thing, But how do you elucidate that to an 8-year-old? It was evident that I required answers, not only for myself, but also for my son. I had to understand what was happening. I couldn't keep ruminating and speculating about what had occurred between us, so I made the decision to engage a private investigator. I didn't have the time or resources to trail her myself, and I had saved up some money for this vital expenditure. When you're on the cusp of validating a suspicion, there's a certain uneasiness that you experience. You know that sensation in your stomach. That's precisely how I felt today when I hired the private investigator. Contrary to what you see in movies, finding a private investigator isn't that simple. It's an unremarkable procedure that involves a lot of formalities and legalities. After checking out a local firm with positive reviews, I visited their office and explained my situation. It all felt so surreal. I was essentially inviting a stranger into my life, asking them to scrutinize the most personal details. The initial few days were nerve-wracking. There were frequent updates, but none of them were decisive. Every time my phone rang with a new development, my heart would skip a beat and I would feel a lump in my throat. It seemed like a small triumph, a bit more time in my tranquil oblivion. Nonetheless, life had to move forward. I had to attend to my work, my son had to go to school, and my wife, well, she appeared as regular as ever. The late nights persisted, the shopping sprees lingered, and the peculiar credit card charges kept appearing. And so the weeks passed, with each moment suffused with an apprehension of the inevitable. Until one day, the call arrived, the call that validated my worst apprehensions, the call that shattered my world as I had known it. The investigator began by stating, "I have some news." His voice was composed, professional, but beneath it lurked a trace of empathy. I instantly realized that what he was about to say would not be a simple matter. As he delved into the evidence he had compiled, my head began to spin. The truth that I had been dreading was unfolding before my eyes. The late-night gatherings, the clandestine hotel meetings, the intimate dinners, all with her boss. The reality hit me. The betrayal did not stop there. A mix of emotions overtook me. Anger, despair, and betrayal, intertwined with a strange sense of relief that I had finally uncovered the truth. But above all these feelings, an overwhelming sense of sadness engulfed me. It was a mournful awakening that the woman I had loved, trusted, and shared a life with was a stranger. Gazing at the walls of our home, all the cherished memories we had created together seemed tainted and spoiled by her actions. Every picture, every moment now felt like a betrayal. Each memento, every shared laughter, now felt like a cruel, twisted joke. Amidst the searing heartache and betrayal, a resolution slowly emerged. I had the truth, and it was time to act on it. There was no turning back, no pretending it never happened. I had to confront the situation, not just for my sake, but for the sake of my son. He deserved a future free of lies and deceit. And so, with the evidence and the pain as my weapons, I prepared to face the truth head-on. I took the next step and hired an attorney to navigate the murky waters of divorce. However, that's a story for another day, a tale of its own. As I walked into the attorney's office that day, my heart felt heavy, my mind was buzzing, and my soul was drenched in a mixture of anger, despair, and betrayal. It was something I never imagined I would be doing, discussing divorce proceedings. The topic of asset divisions was now at the forefront of my mind. There was no turning back. I had to face the situation head-on. I handed over the evidence, the photographs, financial records, and the investigator's report to my attorney. As he flipped through them, I saw his eyes widen in disbelief. I couldn't blame him. It wasn't every day that you came across a case of marital infidelity coupled with rumors of my wife stealing money from her employer. For the next hour, we delved into the legalities of our situation. What stood out to me the most from that conversation was not the dry legal jargon or the procedural intricacies, but the attorney's words of reassurance. "You're doing the right thing," he said, his eyes filled with sympathy. Amid the flurry of paperwork, signatures, and notarizations, there was an odd sense of finality. It felt like I was finally closing a painful chapter of my life. I was ready to embark on a new, uncertain journey, one that would require immense courage and resilience. Anxiety and anticipation had become my constant companions as I waited for the court proceedings to begin. Every ring of the phone sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, and every mail delivery was a moment of apprehension. It was far from easy, but I knew that I was on the path to reclaiming my life for myself and my son. That's the thing about standing up for yourself. Standing up for yourself can be both terrifying and liberating at the same time. And in that moment, that's exactly what I felt. A terrifying sense of liberation that had the power to change my life forever. Serving divorce papers can seem like a dramatic moment. At least that's what movies often portray. In reality, it's a clinical and detached process, devoid of any emotion, and that's exactly how it went down. While she was working, the process service arrived with legal documents in hand. A colleague informed me of her reaction later on, describing how she turned pale and widened her eyes in disbelief. Though I wasn't present, I could envision her shock and the moment when reality set in. When I arrived home that day, the house was silent. She had yet to return from work, which gave me some time to process and gather my thoughts. This was the moment of truth, and I had already passed the point of no return. For 8 years, our lives were intertwined, but now we were in the process of untangling them. One strand at a time, we only had 2 significant assets: our cars. Fortunately, since the house was rented, there were no messy battles over property. In some ways, we were fortunate compared to other divorcing couples, but the pain was still present as I sat in the empty house we once shared. The realization hit me hard. Life was about to take a drastic turn. No more shared dinners, cozy movie nights, or morning kisses. Our love had been reduced to legal documents, and our marriage had become a court proceeding. It was a heartbreaking experience. That's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't discriminate. It creeps in uninvited and demands to be felt. I can still recall the image of her pale face as she walked in. Her lips were tightly pressed together, and her eyes lacked their usual sparkle. It felt as though we were 2 strangers occupying the same space. It was then that I realized we needed to have a conversation, not as a couple on the verge of divorce, but as 2 individuals who had shared a life together. We owed it to each other to lay everything out in the open and have an honest discussion. We settled in the living room, which we had once decorated together, surrounded by memories of happier times. I confronted her about the affair, the rumors of embezzlement, and the lies and deceit. It was a painful conversation, riddled with accusations, denials, and eventually confessions. She admitted to the affair, but denied stealing from her company. Whether she admitted to the affair or not didn't matter much to me, since I had proof of her infidelity. I only wanted to see if she would confess. She tried to justify and explain her actions, but no explanation could mend the trust that had been shattered. As she spoke, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, and hurt. It was time to move forward, to pick up the pieces and start anew. After that painful confession, things moved quickly. Given the circumstances, our divorce case was expedited, and before we knew it, we were standing before a judge finalizing our separation. As we stood there, responding to the judge's questions and reviewing the terms of our divorce, it felt as if we were watching from the sidelines of our own lives. The proceedings were relatively straightforward, considering our situation. There was no property to split, no custody battles to endure. It was merely a matter of signing documents and making it official. Within an hour, everything was done. Our 8-year marriage had been reduced to a stack of papers, our vows dissolved by the stroke of a pen. It was as if a chapter of my life had come to an end. The papers were sealed, never to be opened again. But along with the sense of finality came a newfound freedom. I was eager to start anew, to rebuild my life for my sake and my son's. However, as it turned out, the universe had other plans in store for me. Just when I thought I was nearing the light at the end of the tunnel, an unexpected turn of events presented itself, and my story was far from over. Life threw a curveball my way. It wasn't entirely unexpected, but it was still a shock. After the divorce was finalized, my ex-wife's company hired a forensic accountant. As the weeks went by, the truth began to unravel. The financial records, the illicit transfers, the secret account, all of it pointed to my ex-wife's wrongdoing. The company discovered that she was the culprit behind the missing funds. It was a bitter pill to swallow that amounted to a whopping $70,000. The truth was a tangled web of lies that needed to be unraveled. With the undeniable evidence in hand, legal action was inevitable. Embezzlement is a grave offense, and the company was not willing to turn a blind eye to it. I learned about the incident from a former colleague of my wife. Although the news jolted me, there was a strange sense of justice in the outcome. It was a series of tumultuous events that followed. From her apprehension to the media frenzy and the court hearings, it felt like a real-life soap opera unfolding in front of my eyes. Amidst all the chaos and drama, I couldn't help but feel thankful, grateful for the truth that was finally revealed, grateful for the closure it brought, and grateful for the opportunity to begin anew. Although it marked a bitter conclusion to a turbulent chapter, it was still an ending, and sometimes that's all we need to move forward. That's all it takes to start afresh. At the moment, my ex-wife's sentencing is yet to be determined. The court proceedings are still ongoing, and every day seems to uncover a new revelation, a new headline. She has attempted to contact me a few times from prison, but I have not responded to any of her calls. It's not because of any ill will or resentment, but rather because I need to move forward and put this chapter of my life behind me. The moment the truth was revealed, our story came to an end. There's no way to reverse what has happened, and I must navigate this new reality. I'm making a conscious effort to focus on the positive aspects. I am blessed with my son, who has been a support for me. Throughout this ordeal, I've discovered my true friends, the ones who have stood by me through thick and thin. It's been a bumpy ride, but I remain optimistic for a future that is free from deceit, a future that is filled with new beginnings, and a future that is marked by healing. As I bring my tale to a close, I do so with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. Although the past may be tainted, the future is a blank canvas. Life is all about moving forward, and that's precisely what I intend to do.